Hey there. Thanks for stopping by. Before we dive into today's story, let me know where you're watching from and how this video makes you feel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I used to believe I knew every inch of the man I married. The way Kieran's mouth curved into a half smile before his first cup of coffee. The lazy rhythm of his laugh echoing down the hallway. Even the subtle way his fingers tapped the edge of our kitchen counter when he was lost in thought. I memorized it all like scripture. So when he sat across from me one Thursday evening and told me he needed space, I didn't recognize the man speaking. My name is Serafina Vaughn, Sarah to most. I'm 32, and for the past 6 years, I've built a life around the idea that Kieran was my home. He's 35, the kind of man who draws attention without trying, always a step ahead in the room, effortlessly charming. He wasn't just my husband. He was my confidant, my compass, the one person I thought would never leave me in the dark. That night, the sky outside grumbled with distant thunder. Our apartment smelled of garlic noodles and soy sauce from the takeout bags I'd just opened. I'd barely set our plates on the table when Kieran cleared his throat, eyes locked on his glass, not me. "I've been thinking," he started, his fingers tracing circles around the rim. "I think I need a little time to myself." A laugh slipped out of me, nervous, reflexive, too high-pitched to be real. "Time to yourself? Like a spa weekend kind of time?" He didn't laugh back. His jaw flexed slightly. "No, a trip. To Paris." I blinked. "Paris?" He nodded quickly, like saying it faster would soften the blow. "I found a cheap flight. I just thought, maybe a change of scenery. Just for a bit." It didn't sound casual. He was working hard to make it sound casual, and that alone made my stomach churn. I smiled the way people do when they don't know what else to do. "That's sudden. When were you going to tell me?" He tapped the glass again, the sound hollow. "I just did." A heavy silence settled between us, the kind that makes the air feel thick and hard to breathe. I studied his face, searching for clues, something human in the distance of his eyes. But he was locked up tight, not cold, just unavailable. Still, I nodded. I played the part. I told myself maybe he really did need to get away, that maybe this wasn't about me at all. "Okay," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "If that's what you need." I saw something flicker across his face. Relief. It stung. It stung more than anything he'd actually said. Like he'd expected a fight and was grateful I didn't give him one. The rest of the night passed in a daze. Half-eaten noodles, pointless conversation, laughter I didn't mean. But my chest was tight the entire time. When I woke the next morning, the sound of the shower drifted in from the bathroom. Kieran's suitcase was propped open by the closet. I stared at it, heart pounding. The contents were too organized. Folded clothes, neatly zipped toiletries, passport tucked in the front flap. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This was planned. I sat on the edge of the bed, barely breathing. My phone buzzed beside me. An email. Airline confirmation. I wasn't even sure why I checked it. Maybe I was hoping for proof that I was overreacting. But as I scanned the screen, my heart stuttered. Passenger. Kieran Vaughn. And beneath that, passenger. Lilith Mercer. The air vanished from my lungs. My grip tightened around the phone. Lilith Mercer? I didn't know that name. I shouldn't have known that name. She wasn't supposed to be traveling with my husband. The shower shut off. Panic clawed up my throat. I scrambled to look normal, grabbing one of Kieran's t-shirts from the laundry basket and folding it furiously. My hands moved too fast, too stiff. My heart thundered so loudly I was sure he could hear it through the walls. The bathroom door creaked open. I froze, knuckles white around the cotton in my lap. Kieran stepped out, a towel slung low on his hips, steam trailing behind him like a ghost. His hair was damp, curling slightly at the edges, and he barely glanced in my direction. "You're up early," he mumbled, rifling through his dresser. I forced a smile. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." He nodded absently, tugging on a shirt like we were any ordinary couple, like I hadn't just discovered a woman's name on his flight reservation. He didn't notice my shaking hands, or maybe he did and just didn't care. "Maybe take a nap later," he added casually. A nap. As if closing my eyes would make any of this disappear. As if sleep could dull the sharp blade of betrayal. My throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed a mouthful of sand. I stared at the shirt in my lap, wrinkled now from how tightly I'd been gripping it. I took a slow breath, steeling myself. "Kieran?" I said quietly. He turned, mid-button. Yeah, I raised my eyes to meet his. Who's Lilith Mercer? There, the name laid bare between us. And for a second, just a heartbeat, I saw it. The twitch at the corner of his mouth, the way his shoulders tensed, then dropped. His lips parted, but he said nothing. His whole body betrayed him before he even opened his mouth. But then it vanished. The flicker was gone, replaced by something flat, measured. A mask I'd never seen before. What? He asked. I didn't flinch. I held up my phone. Your flight confirmation. It says you're not going alone. Silence fell heavy. Kieran looked at the screen, then back at me. His expression shifted just enough to register discomfort. Then he shrugged. She's a coworker. Same flight for a work conference. It's just a coincidence. I stared at him, letting the words hang between us like smoke. Coworker. Coincidence. Lies dressed up in polite language. I knew better. I knew his voice too well. I could hear the effort behind every syllable. But I nodded. I let him think I believed him. Okay, I said quietly. He looked relieved, almost grateful. It twisted the knife deeper. Once he left the room, I sat motionless, the weight of everything collapsing in my chest. I could finally breathe, but barely. My breaths were short, shallow. My vision blurred around the edges as I replayed the moment again and again. Lilith Mercer? Just a coworker? Then why had I never heard her name? Kieran talked about work constantly, about his manager, his team, even the annoying guy in accounting who microwaved fish in the break room. But never her. I grabbed my phone and typed her name into search. My pulse thudded as her profile popped up. Public, polished, perfect. She smiled in every photo like the world belonged to her. Scroll, rooftop bars, candlelit dinners, champagne glasses catching golden light. Then one photo stopped me cold. Last month, 2 drinks on a patio table, sunset behind them. The tag, Lilith Mercer and Kieran Vaughn. I clicked it, my stomach clenching so hard I thought I might throw up. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at her. And the way he looked at her, I knew that look. I used to be the one on the receiving end of that expression. I closed my eyes, but it didn't help. The image was burned into the backs of my eyelids. I opened our banking app. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the transactions. March 5th, LaRue Hotel, $437. March 12th, Serafina Restaurant, $198. March 19th, Bloom and Vine Flower Shop, $72. My name wasn't on any of those receipts. I hadn't been to any of those places. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a coincidence. This was betrayal, planned and paid for. I sat back, my breath shallow, fists clenched in my lap. For 6 years, I gave him my love, my loyalty, my trust, and this was what I got in return? No, I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to break. If Kieran wanted to fly halfway around the world to play house with someone else, he'd better be ready for turbulence. Because I wasn't done. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, the silence in our bedroom pressing down like a second layer of skin. My mind buzzed, but underneath the noise, a single thought settled in sharp clarity. I needed to see it for myself. No more assumptions. No more waiting for truths to slip through the cracks in Kieran's carefully rehearsed lies. So I did the most irrational thing I've ever done. I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. Then I typed in the airline name and pulled up the flight. Same departure, same row, 1 extra seat available. My heart was pounding. Logic begged me to shut the laptop, to go to sleep, to let this go. But my gut, the same instinct that made me check the booking in the first place, screamed louder. I booked the ticket. 1 click, 1 breath, 1 confirmation email later, I was officially on the same flight as my husband. Same row, 2 seats over. It felt wild, stupid, desperate. And yet, I'd never felt more certain of anything in my life. I sat there in the dark, letting the glow of the screen fade into black. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt empty, hollowed out by the realization that this was what it had come to, surprise appearances and hidden truths. But I had a plan now, and that was something. The days leading up to the trip were a strange kind of theater. Kieran went about life like everything was fine, maybe even a little more affectionate than usual, as if overcompensating. Or maybe he thought guilt could be buried under extra smiles and goodnight kisses. I played along. I let him kiss my cheek. I asked about his trip like I didn't already know the truth. "Make sure you send me photos," I said one night, my voice light, my smile even lighter. He laughed, tugging me into a one-armed hug. "Of course." Of course, the words echoed in my head long after he fell asleep. When the day came, I packed a small carry-on with the calm precision of someone folding up grief. Just the essentials: a change of clothes, phone charger, courage. At the airport, I watched him from a distance. Kieran breezed through security with that same easy charm that used to make me feel proud to be by his side. Now it made me sick. He looked relaxed, confident, not a trace of hesitation in his step, and then I saw her, Lilith. She moved toward him with the kind of grace that looked like it had been taught. Dark waves of hair, sunglasses tucked into her shirt collar, a soft laugh that reached only him. She touched his arm, lightly, deliberately, and he didn't flinch. In fact, he leaned in. I felt something fracture inside me, a slow cracking that had started the moment I read her name and now split wide open under the fluorescent lights of the boarding gate. I kept my head down, hoodie up, sunglasses on. I could have been anyone, just another passenger waiting for her row to be called. "Boarding now, Group 3, the agent called out. That was us. Kieran and Lilith stepped forward, tickets in hand, their bodies close enough to touch. Matching smiles, matching secrets, and I stood just behind them, one hand gripping the strap of my bag, the other gripping the edge of my self-control. I handed over my boarding pass without a word, the agent scanning it with a beep that sounded like a countdown to detonation. The jet bridge smelled like metal and recycled air, but I barely noticed. My entire focus narrowed on the two figures ahead of me, his hand brushing her lower back, her laugh floating back like perfume. By the time I found my seat 2 rows behind them, I was no longer shaking. I was calm, sharp, watching. They leaned toward each other, whispering. I didn't need to hear the words. I knew the language. I'd once spoken it with him. The cabin lights dimmed as the flight attendants moved down the aisle, performing safety checks with practiced smiles. Around me, people settled in with books, earbuds, and eye masks, ready to drift into the suspended quiet of an overnight flight. But me, I couldn't even blink. Kieran was just ahead, 2 rows slightly to the left. I could see the back of his head, the slope of his shoulders, the way he leaned toward her as they spoke in hushed tones. Lilith sat beside him like she belonged there, like she had earned that space. They were laughing. I knew that laugh. I used to be the reason for that laugh. Now, hearing it felt like drowning, like something warm and familiar had turned cold and cruel. My fingers curled into tight fists in my lap. I told myself to breathe. 1 breath in, 1 breath out. The flight hadn't even taken off, and I already felt like I was crashing. I forced myself to look away, to stare out the window at the darkness swallowing the tarmac. But it didn't help. Their presence was magnetic, pulling my focus, no matter where I aimed it. Every small gesture between them was like a slap I couldn't dodge. Her hand resting on his knee for just a moment, his head turning when she whispered something close to his ear. Her soft laugh bubbling up like a secret only they shared. And Kieran, he wasn't resisting. He wasn't hesitating. It was easy for him. Too easy. And that's what hurt the most. I reached for my water bottle, my hands unsteady, took a sip, pretended it helped. It didn't. I used to sit beside him on planes just like this. He used to rest his head on my shoulder, whispering jokes until I laughed loud enough for strangers to stare. Now he was doing that with her, with Lilith. And he had no idea I was here. So close I could count the threads in the seat back of his row. I remembered every late-night meeting, every mysterious work trip, every time he came home smelling faintly like a perfume I didn't wear. It was all so obvious now. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. Because when you love someone, you don't look for betrayal. You look for excuses. But now, excuses were over. I straightened in my seat, the air too dry, too cold. A flight attendant walked by offering drinks. I declined with a tight smile. My body felt like it belonged to someone else, frozen, hollowed out, filled with static. But my mind was sharp, alert, watching. Every time Lilith leaned closer, every time their fingers grazed, I filed it away. Proof, memory, fuel. I should have hated him. But in that moment, all I felt was this aching sense of finality, like something sacred between us had died quietly in row 18, and no one had even noticed. The plane finally took off, a soft rumble beneath us. The lights dimmed to a pale blue, and the world outside disappeared into clouds. Still, I sat there, eyes fixed on the silhouettes of the people who had rewritten my love story without telling me. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just watched, because sometimes silence is louder than confrontation, and this was only the beginning. The plane dipped, wings tilting slightly as the announcement crackled through the speakers. "We've begun our final descent into Paris." Passengers stirred, stretching, rubbing their eyes, adjusting their seatbacks. I didn't move. Outside the window, the city of lights shimmered beneath a soft layer of morning mist. But for me, Paris didn't feel magical. It felt like a battleground. 2 rows ahead, Kieran shifted in his seat. I saw him reach for Lilith's hand, their fingers locking effortlessly like this had been practiced many times before. My chest tightened. 6 years. 6 years of shared holidays, private jokes, inside glances at dinner parties, replaced by this quiet betrayal, by the gentle intertwining of hands that once only reached for mine. The landing gear thudded beneath us. My body jolted slightly, but my expression stayed still. I wasn't going to fall apart now. I watched them from behind as the plane rolled to a stop at the gate. Kieran stood, stretching, his body language relaxed, unburdened. He reached for the overhead bin, pulling down their bags. Hers first, then his. I stayed seated, pretending to fumble with my seatbelt, giving them space to move ahead. Let them walk straight into it. The aisle filled slowly, passengers murmuring goodbyes, digging out passports and carry-ons. Kieran and Lilith stepped forward together, their voices low, hers full of soft laughter. They disappeared into the jet bridge. I counted to 20, then stood. My legs were steady now. My bag rolled behind me in clean, even clicks against the floor. The terminal was bright and glassy, sunlight spilling across polished tiles. I spotted them easily. He had his arm around her shoulder now, pulling her close as they walked toward baggage claim. She tilted her head back and smiled. That smile. I wanted to tear it off her face. But I didn't rush. I didn't run. I walked with purpose, each step sharpening my resolve. And then, like it had been choreographed by fate, Kieran slowed, adjusted his bag, turned slightly. His eyes scanned the crowd absently, then stopped. On me. Time hiccuped. His expression changed in an instant, from calm to alarm. His mouth parted like he meant to speak, but no sound came out. He looked pale, frozen. Lilith, confused, turned to follow his gaze, and that's when she saw me. The color drained from her face like spilled wine on white cloth. Her jaw went slack, lips parting as if a scream was stuck somewhere in her throat. Kieran took a step forward, hesitating. "Sarah?" I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I smiled. Not the kind of smile that forgives, not the kind that understands, the kind that burns, the kind that says, "I know everything." I took one slow step closer, tilted my head ever so slightly. "Surprise," I said, my voice calm, almost sweet. "Enjoying your solo trip?" The silence that followed was louder than a slap. Kieran looked like he'd been punched in the chest. Lilith? She looked like she wanted to disappear. I didn't give them that chance. I stood tall in the middle of that gleaming Paris terminal, with the truth hanging in the air like smoke, and for the first time in days I felt like I could finally breathe. For a moment, no one moved. Kieran just stood there, staring at me like the ground had opened up beneath his feet. Lilith gripped the handle of her suitcase so tightly, her knuckles went white. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. The truth was already doing the talking for me, echoing in the silence between us. Kieran opened his mouth again, maybe to explain, maybe to lie. I didn't give him the chance. I just lifted my chin, gave him a look that said, "You don't get to rewrite this story anymore." Then I turned, and I walked away. Not because I was weak, but because I was done. Each step felt like shedding a layer of pain, of confusion, of him. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see their reactions. I already knew what they looked like. Shock, shame, regret. But regret was a luxury they'd have to live with. I had something better. Freedom. Out on the sidewalk, Paris smelled like morning rain and roasted coffee. People rushed past me, busy with their own lives, unaware of the quiet war I had just won. I found a bench outside the terminal and sat down, the early light brushing across my skin. My phone buzzed, a message from Kieran. I didn't open it. Instead, I scrolled past it and took a photo of the sunrise over the airport, its golden light slicing through soft gray clouds. Caption: "Sometimes the best closure is no reply at all." I hit post. Somewhere out there, another woman might read it and know she's not crazy, that her gut wasn't lying. That silence can be louder than revenge, and maybe she'd find the same strength I had, buried under heartbreak but waiting. I stood, took one last deep breath, and stepped toward the train station. Because Paris wasn't the end of my story. It was where I started writing a new one. Just for me.